When we're talking about the program, what always comes up is the idea of controlled reading. A lot of parents get a little nervous that they're not going to be, well, my kids, but we're working on chapter books right now. You're telling me we won't be reading chapter books for a while. Why is that the approach? What is controlled reading?
You never want to discourage a child from reading text, right? Of course. What we find though is that kids who are compensated readers and excited about reading, which we hope they are, when they're reading that book that has all sorts of concepts that they really don't quite really truly know or recognize yet, they're just reinforcing compensatory reading. They are not actually improving their encoding and decoding. So we usually ask that kids don't read uncontrolled text or text that only has the concepts that they have been taught for quite a period of time. That said, I would never make it a battle with a child. But what we have found, and Ashley have been through this several times, my kid loves to read. All he wants to do is read, read, read. How am I going to take away books from him? And then we say, well, don't. And what happens is that the kids would rather listen to an audiobook than try and decode or encode the same book because, first of all, it doesn't take as much cognitive load, so it's not as exhausting. It's more accurate and it's probably a little bit more enjoyable and reliable and effective for them. So we'll have parents that really, go to the mat for it. And we're okay with that. We are not in the business of arguing with parents. We want to support parents. But we do find that most of the times the child would be just as happy listening to the audiobook as long as they can look at the pictures, right? We all want to look at the pictures.
What's the benefit to controlled reading?
The benefit to controlled reading is to not reinforce habits of compensatory reading. So when they're reading controlled reading, they're only working with the concepts that they have previously learned, and they're not continuing to guess about concepts that they have not.
So while a kiddo is developing these decoding and encoding skills, before they're actually doing uncontrolled reading, how do we develop their vocabulary and continue to have a rich vocabulary and rich experiences?
So how do we continue to have them learning while they're learning to read, even though they might be at a period of time where they're actually in school reading to learn? How do we do that? And we say through audiobooks. And audiobooks give them access not only to reading at their grade level, but audiobooks can give them access to reading at their ability, which may be higher than their grade level. And we find that's often the case. So they can keep learning, right? So not only that, but if you limit their learning and their reading to only what they can read, whether it's compensatory or encoding and decoding, they are not being exposed to much of the vocabulary they will need. Spoken words are very limited in vocabulary. However, written language is where we acquire most of our vocabulary. So not only are they still continuing to learn vocabulary, but eventually if they ever do see that word in print, it will be much easier for them to decode.